Hey guys, hey. Listen, this is Pastor Sean, and it's a Sunday night, and I don't normally do lives on Sunday night, and this shirt is so crooked. All right, but I want to talk to you about pastors, and if you have a good pastor, I need you to do two things for me. If you have a good pastor, number one, if you have a good pastor, I need you to put a five in the comment because five represents grace, and a good pastor is a grace. But I also need you to share this with your pastor or share this with someone else who goes to church with you who also would say that they have a good pastor. I want to have a conversation about pastors today. And I don't know, it's just something that came in my heart today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit why that it came in my heart. And then I came and did some research and I just thought, man, this is a conversation that we really ought to have. Listen, I encourage you, man, text your pastor and tell them to get on here because I think it's a conversation that we need to have. Again, the stuff that I'm going to talk about, it's not for every pastor, but the statistics are big enough that we know that it's for a lot of pastors. So let's just talk about pastors, right? Let's talk about having good pastors. What is a pastor? In Jeremiah 3:15, God says that I'm going to give you pastors. Another word for pastor is a shepherd. I'm going to give you shepherds after my own heart. And I think the truth of it is that whether you identify your pastors as your spiritual parents, that really a pastor is the role of parenting in this sense that there is this responsibility of protection. We're responsible for making sure that, the church just not crazy. People just not, we don't have foolishness going on. We're supposed to deal with the wolves, the goats, the sheep. And we're supposed to educate and instruct so that you can walk in the will of God for your life. And the truth of it is that I always say that pastoring people is a little bit like herding cats. And I don't mean that with any disrespect, but the reality of it is that you cannot make adults do anything, which is why this whole dynamic of having pastors is actually really fascinating. Because in order to be pastored well, you actually have to be a person who is willing to submit to the authority God has placed in someone else's life to help you. Now, I'm going to try to say that again. One of the reasons I believe that pastoring can be so challenging is that in order to effectively pastor adults, that adult has to be willing to submit to the authority that God has given to the pastor. And when I'm saying pastor tonight, I mean prophets, teachers, everybody who is operating in a leadership role where they are showing up, serving the people of God week after week after week after week. So whatever you call that, you may call yourself elder, you may call yourself minister, brother. They may call you by your first name. No, I'm just talking about, I'm talking about people who serve in this role. And I'm talking about how interesting it is. And anybody who has adult kids, you know what I'm talking about. That when your kids are young, there are things you can make them do. But when your kids are adults, you have to really lead by hoping that they will follow your example, that they will take your suggestions, that they will take your instruction. And often that means watching them like just make a mess of things that you could have helped them with had they been willing to listen. Any adult parents of adult children out here? And so to me, pastoring adults is a lot like that. And so again, if you're just joining in, thank you for joining in. If you believe you have a good pastor, put a five in the comment, tag somebody else, tag your pastor, because I really want to say something that I think will encourage pastors. It is my sincere hope that it encourages pastors because it's going to encourage how you engage with pastors. And I don't know. I just think we should have this conversation. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what led to it. Pastor Edwin and I, on Tuesday, we're going to be celebrating 30 years of marriage. Oh my God. We're going to be celebrating 30 years of marriage. But in April of 2025, we will celebrate 25 years of pastoring. So basically, we were married a little over 5 years when we started pastoring. So basically, we were pastors all of our 30s, all of our 40s, and here we are in our 50s, and we're still pastoring. We thank God for the assignment. And I want to say this, that we have been really, really blessed to have some amazing, amazing partners at our church, some gracious people. Anyway, we're getting ready to take a little trip. And as we were getting ready to leave Top Golf today, Chris and Valley got everybody, some of our tribe on a FaceTime and said, we want to give you this gift for your anniversary. And my heart was so incredibly touched by that they were just like, hey, it's your 30-year anniversary. You're not going to be here, but we really, really, really just want to say we love you, and we want to say we appreciate you. And man, that just touched my heart and it blessed my heart. But it also made me think about the numerous conversations that I have had with so many pastors. And those conversations have intensified since the end of the pandemic about, the way they feel, how exhausted they are, how much just the stress that they're under. And so I was actually looking up a couple of things, and I thought it was very interesting. And it was saying that since the global pandemic, my son hate when I say global pandemic, he like it's the same thing. Since the pandemic has ended, that about 40% of pastors are pretty consistently thinking about quitting. That's a big number. And they talk about it. They talk about that is because of the intense stress that pastors have felt in the pandemic and after the pandemic, taking care of people, not having an opportunity to rest, losing people, whether they lost those people because they transitioned, they died of COVID, they died of something else. But as many of you know, that a lot of people stopped going to church after the pandemic. Now, this is a thing that I think is really interesting, because if you're not a pastor, I don't know if you can really, really understand this, but I do think you can ask God to give you revelation of it. I think that one of the challenges with being a pastor is that if you're going to be good at pastoring, you have to allow God to infuse your heart with a deep love for people that you don't necessarily do life with. I mean, they're not your kids. It's not your best friend. It's not the favorite couple that you go to dinner with. But if he's going to give you pastors after his own heart, then in the heart of these people he has called to pastor, he has got to put a deep love in their hearts for you. Somebody say, thank God for my pastors. And so it's a very interesting dynamic, because in most cases, in most relationships, you deeply, deeply care about somebody because of the time you spent with them personally. But when you are a pastor, you deeply, deeply care about the people that you shepherd, and you care about people in general, because God has put it in your heart. Man, how much does God love people that he would do that? And so I think that a lot of times parishioners, partners, members, whatever they call them at your church, I think that you don't always think about your pastors. And I don't mean your pastors in the sense of, ooh, let me go to church and get a good word. I don't mean your pastors, ooh, my family's really going through, let me tell my pastor so they can see about it. But I mean the care of your pastors as people. And I think that was what touched me so much today, because our tribe has shown just how much they care about us as people. If we never pastored again, how much they care about us, how much they want our kids to do well. They want us to be healthy. They want us to have a good marriage. They actually care about us as pastors. Now, this conversation is not like a rebuke it's really just a conversation, because I think that honestly, because of the work that I get to do, and I would love if you keep sharing this. And if you're new coming in and you have a good pastor, you need to put a comment in here. But I guarantee you, everybody here, you know, 5 people who go to church that you ought to eat. I don't just mean you ought to tag them. I think you ought to text them and tell them to get on this live, because if we have 40% of pastors who are thinking about quitting, then I think that we as the people need to say, what can we do so that our pastors do not feel so much stress, so much anxiety, so much frustration, and so much disappointment? And so, there was this other statistic from 2023 that says 53% of pastors have considered quitting. So we have like 40% of people who have considered quitting since the pandemic, and then we have 53% who have considered quitting, quitting in their lifetime. And I can tell you that I am a part of that 53%. I can tell you that there was a time in my life that I wanted to quit pastoring, that I was absolutely exhausted by the number of people who could just take, talk about, take. And I just was like, God, like, would you just let me quit? Because contrary to how they try to promote this, the truth of it is, it's a lot of things you can do besides pastoring to make more money with less stress. And the truth of it is, if you go and do the research and you go and do the thing, most pastors aren't making any significant money. And in many cases, most pastors are giving more to their church than they are receiving from their church. So let's be clear. This is not work you do for the money. This is not work you do for the money. You do it because God has put something in your heart. So I really relate. I am very thankful that I have a tribe of people. Number one, I'm thankful that I have a very good husband that I pastor with, who is going to take good care of Sean Strickland. I am thankful that God has given us spiritual parents. I'm thankful that God has given us friends in the ministry. And I'm thankful that I have friends outside the ministry, because I am telling you that I think the truth of it is, back in 2004, I took enough blows that, had I not had a divine intervention from some good people, some Chris Valleys, some April Marlowe, some Ralph Marlowe, some Tenetria Williams, if I had not had those people in my life, I honestly probably would have quit ministry. And so when I hear people quitting ministry, I try not to beat them up, because I understand firsthand the pain. And I think that this is the thing that nobody tells you about ministry. Nobody tells you that in reality, the people who hurt you most deeply will not be outsiders. They will be the people that you have prayed over. They will be the people that you have given your last to keep their lights on because the church didn't have it to give. There will be the people who said, Pastor, I'm with you for life, until you corrected them. They will be the people who thought that you were the best thing since sliced bread, until they weren't in that kind of pain anymore. And I think I'm saying this to you to say that if you have good pastors, and your pastors have done ministry for any length of time, your pastors have experienced blows that they will probably never tell you about. So I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that most pastors are spending a lot of time praying for you. Most pastors are spending a lot of time preparing messages for you. And even just the way, years ago, we used to drive to Conway for about 8 years. We drove to Conway because that's what the Lord told us to do. So we drove 2.5 hours to church. And I want you to know, I'm being transparent with you so that you can get some insight that most pastors don't give. Praise the Lord, I'm healed, delivered, set free. God has been good to me. But I want you to understand the impact of this, because I want you to understand that God gives people pastors after their own heart. And that means we deeply love these people that we don't have relationship with, that we alter our life in order to make their lives better. And often those same people disregard us. And so I just can I be transparent? If you want me to be real transparent, can you say it in the comments, say be transparent, because it's very, very interesting to me, because, that so many people who profess how much they love their pastors won't consistently come to church. They won't consistently come to church to get the word. They won't consistently do the word so their life can be transformed. But when they have crisis, if their pastors do not jump to resolve it, those become the people who talk about the pastors. Now, I'm just here. I felt like the Lord was like, talk about it tonight. That's why 53% of pastors think about quitting. That is why 40% of pastors since the pandemic think about quitting. That is why I read a statistic that said 73% of pastors are burned out. Because the same people who love their pastors but are too busy to come to church will then talk about their pastors when their pastors do not jump through hoops to get them out of the situation that they wouldn't have been in if they had just come and got the message and done what they were supposed to do. But don't y'all leave me now, because I want to talk about some things we can do for our pastors. But I read a statement today. It literally made me tear up. It made me tear up. This statement blew my mind. I'm going to pull it up. I had never heard it before. I was out here reading stats because I didn't just want to come here and share my experience. I want y'all to read this statistic right here. I'm going to let you read it, and then I'm going to read it out loud. Are y'all reading it? I'm going to read it, but I want you to read it. The average person loses 5 to 7 significant relationships in a lifetime. The average pastor loses that many per year. Listen, even now my heart is tender over that, because if you have ever lost a good friendship, if you have ever lost a relationship in divorce, if you've ever just had somebody walk out and leave you and you don't understand why, imagine experiencing that. The average pastor experiencing that 5 to 7 times a year. And I said that to say that I don't think our statistics, they didn't give any information whether that number was higher since the pandemic. But I will say this, I can tell you this, being a pastor, I can tell you the number of people who literally leave without a word. I can tell you the number of people who thought you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you helped them and you did all of this stuff for them. And then just one day they decided they didn't like you. I can tell you about the number of pastors that I've sat in rooms with as they've wept over the people who have talked about them and the Lord won't let them say anything. I can tell you that the job of pastoring is way, way more than preaching a message on Sunday. So I can tell you, and I just was thinking, I was like, if you think about losing 5 to 7 significant relationships in a lifetime, and then you think about pastors losing that many relationships per year that they're in ministry, then I think it's safe to say that we have a lot of pastors who are hurting, and that we as the people need to take a better care of our pastors. That we need to take better care of our pastors. So I got some things that I'm gonna say I got some things that I'm gonna say, but y'all. Most of you aren't pastors. Some of you serve in ministry. But what are things you think could be done to take better care of pastors? And it's so interesting because I feel like pastors almost sometimes, you kind of danged if you do and danged if you don't. And what I mean by that is that if pastors don't open their heart up, because I'll say this, you guys talk a lot about first ladies being closed and stuff, but have you ever considered how poorly first ladies are treated? Often how poorly people's kids are treated. We've been really blessed that hasn't been our story, but that's probably real because me and Pastor Strick will like get you real told about our kids. But have you even considered, like, so many people are like, the first lady is closed. The first lady doesn't want to, she's not open. She sits in the back of the church. She comes late. She leaves early. If you didn't center yourself, have you ever considered that to even be a first lady? Because let me say this, for me, my grace is that I'm not a first lady. I'm Edwin's wife, but I'm also a pastor. But if you are a first lady, you're actually called into a ministry. You are called into an assignment that is not your assignment. And I want you to think about it like this. If your husband is a doctor or a lawyer or whatever the case may be, an architect, you may in your home feel the impact of that, but you don't go to work with him. You don't go to work with him while they talk about him. You don't go to work with him while whatever the things happen. You don't do that. And when you are a first lady and your husband is called to pastor and you're sitting in church listening to them talk about your husband like a dog when you know how late he stayed up preparing a message for them, or you're watching the very family that you and your husband didn't take a vacation in order to make sure that they didn't lose their house because them and their 5 kids would have been on the street. And you're sitting there watching them talk about you. And then you're like, oh, she's not friendly. And I just wonder, even for first ladies, how many people actually pray for the first lady? How many people, I'm not talking about, oh, I want her to be cute and wear a pink dress and a hat, but like literally, I really want to cover you because I don't know the things that you're going through. I don't know the story. I don't know what you're going through. I just want to talk about a couple things, and then I want to give y'all these 10 things. I mean, just things that people do that they don't, that I don't think people mean any harm, but I don't think they consider the stress it adds to people in ministry. Is this helping y'all? Can y'all keep sharing? Because I really think this is a conversation that we have, because if God has given us pastors as gifts, we need to take good care of our pastors. And I'm so thankful for the pastors, for partners of FOC and the leadership of FOC, because they really do take good care of us. They're going to make sure that we're okay. But I mean, like, I want to be real honest with y'all. I'm talking about something like this. Most people spend, most pastors spend anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a week preparing one message to then preach somewhere between 30 and an hour and 15, kind of depending on where you go to church. And I want you to just stop it. And if you have ever done this, I just want you to say, ouch. I want you to be self-reflective. I don't want you to think about the people who, talk bad about passing them. I want you to just be self-reflective for yourself. Have you ever demanded, pushed your way in, had to have a conversation with your pastor before church as though they didn't have to minister? Because in your mind, your problem was so big and so significant that it had to be addressed. You can go ahead and say, ouch. Have you ever watched your pastor preach? They preach. Edwin Strickland done gave you an hour and 15 minutes. He done gave you 15 steps. He done all of that stuff. But then after it's over, you can't just let him go home and go eat with his family and take off the wet shirt he preached through. You literally need to tell him your story. You can say ouch. Or whoever your pastor is, Pastor Alexander, Pastor Johnson. And I think the challenge is that so many people think that having a pastor means having the right to all of them. It's funny because nobody said ouch, but I've been in church long enough to know that some of you, if you got a problem on a Sunday morning, you will message your pastors before they're preparing to preach. And that sometimes you can't even hear the message because you can't wait till church is over so you can beeline them and vomit all your problems over them, which many of those problems could have potentially been solved had you listened to the teaching. But it's okay if you don't say ouch. That's fine. It's okay if you don't say ouch. But I got my soul shift on because if we don't do better, if we don't have a soul shift, nothing changes. In fact, it's not enough for me to look at Chris and say, oh, Chris needs to stop doing this. No, I got to be to look at myself and say, am I complicit in this? I'm saying that I love my pastors, but am I complicit in this? Here's another question. How many times has your pastor made a call for volunteerism, to volunteer, but you still have not found a place to consistently serve? You can say ouch. You can say ouch. How many times have you been a part of a conversation where somebody was talking about your pastor and you were willing to entertain foolishness about them when you know how they bailed you out? You know how they prayed for you. You know how they helped you. Okay. So I don't want this to be a rebuking session. I just want us to talk about taking good care of pastors. Keep sharing. Listen, our pastors are exhausted. Our pastors are stressed out. And it's so funny because years ago when Edwin was principal of McNair Middle School, and this parent came in and she was like, I need you to do X, Y, and Z because it's best for my kid. And Edwin said to her, he said, the problem is you only think about what's best for your kid, but my responsibility is to think about what is best for everybody that's here. And what I say that happens a lot of times with pastors is that the people want what's best for them. They want what's best for them. You want the praise and worship that's best for you. You want the church service that's best for you. You want what's best for you, but you don't consider that the job of the pastor is to try to help all the sheep grow, to help all of the sheep progress, right? And how many of you have just, I was thinking about this, the lepers, and it says Jesus healed 10 lepers, but only one came back to say thank you. And I would say that I think that one of the biggest challenges for people in ministry is that they don't say thank you. That somebody will labor with you. And let's just have a real conversation. Even somebody like me who is a coach. When people are in pain, I never charge them for all the time I spend with them the way a counselor would. I ain't trying to be funny. Your counselor really like you, but when your time is up, they put you out that office. But how many pastors spend hours talking to you about your kids, about your husband, about your job, about whatever's going on in your life, about the problem with your mama, about the problem with, and you don't even say, you know what, my pastor asked me to be a greeter. You know what, dadgummit, I'm going to be a greeter and I'm going to like people. Or you know what, I'm going to send my pastor a Starbucks gift card. Or I'm going to send my pastor and his wife or her, I'm going to send my pastor and her husband out to dinner because, man, if they spend this much time talking to me, and I'm one of 100, I wonder how much time they spend talking to people about their problems. It was very interesting because they were saying that one of the reasons that pastors are so exhausted is because everybody thinks their pain is the most important pain. So there's some questions I just wrote down. Have you ever considered the number of times your pastors have ministered to your pain while they were dealing with their own? Have you ever considered how many times they have interrupted their moments of happiness to deal with your pain? How many times a dinner got pushed back? How many times a dinner got cut short? How many times they missed a vacation? How many times they had to come back early from a vacation? How many times they took a call on a vacation? How many times they got up out the bed? How much times they stayed up late? I just want you to think about how because this was all for people who said they had great pastors. I just want you to think about the time you think your pastor has spent with you. And I want you to ask yourself right now, if you could successfully do that for 15 people a week. If you have ever talked to your pastor when you were in pain, put a 1 in the comment or raise your hand. And ain't nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with talking to your pastor. I'm saying, have you ever considered that you weren't the only person who was coming with your pain? And have you ever considered how they manage all that pain when they get through hearing everybody's pain? Have you ever considered that if they deeply love you, that it must impact them to hear about your pain, but they got off the phone with your pain and they heard about 12 other people's pain during the course of the week? And then they said they wanted to go on vacation and you still had one more question you needed to ask. Just say, Holy Ghost, help us do better. Now, I want to go back to this stat. Most people will lose 5 to 7 significant relationships over the course of a lifetime, but pastors lose 5 to 7 significant relationships per year. I just want you, how does that make you feel? What do you think? What do you think would happen to you? No, come on, Laniki. I hope I said that right, Miss Jones. My pastor even counsels people who aren't a part of their congregation. Holy Ghost, help us do better, because the Stricklands counsel people who are not a part of their congregation. And I know most people counsel people who are not a part of their congregation. So we're counseling people, we're praying for people, we're preparing for things. And can I tell y'all something that most pastors hate for people to say? We know this. Ralph, if you on here, you know what it is. Let me tell you what most pastors know. The very people, and if it's any pastors or people in leadership in here, when I say this, you just go ahead and shout, because you know the pastors, we hate this. When people are like, I love you, I ain't gonna never leave, baby, they got one foot out the door. In fact, the people who tell you that they love you and they never go leave, you can almost bet in the next 90 days, they will be in a conversation with somebody talking about you, and they're going to forget all the stuff that you did for them. They're going to pick how you picked them back up when everybody else had thrown them away. And one of the things that I think is most painful about pastoring is the same people who you walk through their nastiness will dog you because you're not as perfect as they thought you were. Not that you even said you were, as they thought you were, or they thought you should be. It's amazing to me. The people, because pastors literally take the wounded people. They take people who come in. You got all of this junk in your life. You nasty. You got a bad attitude. You got broken relationships. You've been injured. You've been wounded. You've wounded people. You've been injured, and they literally take the word and they just literally, for lack of a better term, they love hell out of you. They love hell off of you. They hear about all your nasty stuff. They know about all your late night booty calls. They know about all of this different stuff. But then you find out that they have humanity, that they make mistakes. And now you like, oh man, I'm out of here. So just for the record, most pastors, we can't stand to hear people say, I'm never going to leave you. It's like pretty much if you say that, you out. You're out. Okay, so let's talk about 10 things. Who would like to know 10 things that we could do to take better care of our pastors? 10 things that we could do to take better care of our pastors. I hope y'all getting something out of this. Baby, they don't want to have a real conversation about it, because a real conversation about it requires for many people to acknowledge that they are a part of a church in order to get what they can get, not to grow collectively. That's why it's so easy for them to be there and not serve. That is why it is so easy for them to take and not give. That is why it is so easy for them to be there when they are broken, but then when they are better, to feel like that place is not good enough for them. Anyway, so let's talk about it. Number one, what's the number one thing that we can do? I even put it in a little banner so we can see it. Okay. 10 things we can do to help support our pastors. Number one, we can commit to pray for them often. We can commit to pray for them often. Number two, we can express our appreciation on a regular basis. So we can commit to pray for them often, pray for them, pray for their kids, pray for their businesses, pray for everything that they touch. And then we can express our appreciation. What are ways that we can express our appreciation? Let's put it in the comment. What are ways that we can express our appreciation? I'm going to tell you the number one way that somebody can express their appreciation to me. Do the word. Do the word. That is one of the number one ways that you can express your appreciation to me, is that you can do the word. Because if you do the word, you go stop being in some of those pits, which means that I'm going to stop having to talk you out. Because really, sometimes pastoring people is like this. Literally, this is the visual. Somebody takes off running and they jump over a cliff and they fall in the rocks. And the Lord says, go get them. So you scale down in the ragged edges of the rocks, put them on your back, carry them back up, nurse them back to health. And you know what they do? What they do? Take off running and jump over that cliff again. And I want you to understand this. In your humanity, I cannot tell you in my humanity how many times I have been done. I'm like, child, I'm not having now another conversation. Child, I'm not helping them no more. Child, baby, I'm done. I'm done. Can you say done? Done. And I say that I'm done. And the Holy Ghost say, go help them. The Holy Ghost say, I know they talked about you, but they need some groceries. I know they lied on you, but I need you to pray for them. And then the love of God, my love towards God and my love towards them that he put in my heart, causes me to go off this cliff again to bring them back up. And I'm telling you, that is the life of every good pastor. Every good pastor, we be talking all that stuff. But at the end of the day, when the Holy Ghost say, talk to them again, counsel them again, help them again, pray for them again, we be doing it. Y'all remember that movie Friday? We be doing it. We be doing it. Okay, so we can express our appreciation, and they put some comments in here on how you can express your appreciation. Number 3, we could provide let me fix that. Oh, no, I was right. Number 3, provide practical support. Find a place to serve and serve well. Find a place to serve and serve well. I want y'all to hear me. I'm going to tell you this. If you've been in the church for 6 months and you ain't found a place to serve, you part of the problem. I said it. You've been in the church for 6 months and you can't find. I love my pastors, but I can't serve. I love the praise team, but I can't serve. I'm getting fed here, but I can't serve. Find a place to serve and serve well. And I want to add this in here under number 3. You don't help your pastors when you got to fight against everybody they put in leadership, because can't nobody tell you nothing but the pastor. You're not serving well. Because if LaTanya is the pastor and she puts me over children's church and you come up in here and you make it difficult for me, you're making it difficult for her. Don't be those people who like, oh, my pastor ain't preaching today, I ain't coming to church. You know what that tells me about you? You're immature. You know what it tells me about you, really? It tells me that you don't care about the church. You care what you get from the church. No, I'm going to say that again. When you are a person who will not come to church unless your pastor preaches, but your pastor leaves other people to preach and you won't come, you are saying you do not care about the church. You only care about what you can get from the church. All right, let's keep going. Number 4, encourage time off. Encourage time off. Encourage time off. If your pastors aren't getting time off, say, listen, pastor, how can I support you? Can we form a committee? What can we do? Because you need time off. Your pastor needs time to refresh, to rejuvenate, so they can be even better pastors to you. Don't let your pastors work themselves to death. Me and Pastor Rick was talking about this the other day. We were so glad that the pandemic came. It forced us to get it really got us in a place of taking better care of our health. But do you know how many pastors we know that have worked serving the people, having strokes, having heart attacks in the pulpit, dropping dead from stress, exhaustion? That is foolishness. And I am telling you that if you really love your pastor, you should not be okay with watching your pastor work themselves to death for you. Crystal said, y'all need to share this teaching. You say that this is a gift God gave you, but you're watching your pastor get bigger. You're watching your pastor have labor breathing. You're watching your pastor work extra hard. Your pastor is still having to mow the grass. And you don't say, you got to be like, babe, let me tell you what this church ain't going to do. Y'all ain't going to kill my pastor. Now, what we going to do is we going to do some things different around here. You are not going to kill my pastor. So we go do some stuff. I need to serve more. I need to get involved. Do you even know if your church, let me ask you a question. Do you even know if your church has this old school? If you Baptist, you're going to know what this is. Do you have a pastoral care team? Do you have a pastoral care team? Do you know how your pastors get taken care of? Do you make sure that they are celebrated on their birthdays, on their anniversaries? No, I mean, like, even if the regular people don't say nothing about this, are you gonna say, now listen, y'all, I ain't seen no announcement come out, but what I know is that Pastor birthday is coming up, and what we not finna do is show up in here empty-handed. All right, encourage time off. Let's keep going. We almost done. Ooh, compensate them fairly. No, we had Pastor's aid. Chris said she can train. Pastor Chris Valley said, if you need to know how to take better care of your pastor, she can train. She ain't lying. Compensate them fairly. Compensate them fairly. The truth of it is that I read somewhere, I think the last statistic I read was that no, I ain't got to guess. As of August 2024, the average salary for a pastor in the United States is between $48,382. Somebody put that in the comments. $48,382 and $49,477. The average salary for a pastor in the United States is between $48,382 and $49,477, with the range being between $30,633 and $79,836. They say the average salary for a pastor in Arkansas is about $22.51 an hour. I just want to ask you, would you do that work for $48,000? That's how you know that people ain't out here doing this. Like, that's why, would you do it for that? And let's not talk about the number of pastors who don't get paid at all. Let's not talk about the number of pastors who are bivocational, who work a job and still pastor full time, but you still expect them to be at everything that's important to you. Man, this is so important. No, Apostle, I'm talking about taking care of pastors. No, I want you to be honest. I want you to ask yourself just about what you know that pastors do. Would you do that work for less than $50,000 a year? Would you do it? So why are you tripping when they asking you to take up a special offering for the pastors? Why are you tripping? Okay. Compensate them fairly. Now, I believe you can do it through tithes and offering, but I think it ought to be so important to you that if you got to go old school and sell you some chicken dinners, what you need to do. Danielle said that's not taking into account that pastors are on call 24/7. I would like to tell you Sean Strickland is not on call 24/7. I would like to tell you that Sean Strickland going to bed. The Bible says that God never sleeps or slumbers, not Sean. But a lot of pastors are on call 24/7. I am not in that number. You say, Pastor, what happened if somebody needs you in the middle of the night? Call, what's his name? Call him. All right, let's keep going. Woo! Somebody talk about this. Respect their boundaries. Respect their boundaries. Respect their boundaries. So many people do not respect the pastor's boundaries. So many people who consider themselves to be good members. We almost done, guys. They don't respect the pastor's boundaries. And it's really because people want to believe that their circumstances are special. You are special, but your circumstances are not. And the truth be told is that if you in a good church, they probably have taught you how to navigate them circumstances. And if you pull up some of them old notes, respect their boundaries. That means if you know that your pastor take a day off on Friday, don't call on Friday. If you know that your pastor and his wife have date night on Thursday night, what is you calling them for on Thursday night? You ain't got nothing to talk about. Jessica, you can go ahead and send me them notes when you get through. Respect their boundaries. Number 7. Now, I'm not trying to be funny. If you grew up Baptist, this may not sit with you well, because in Baptist church, you can vote your pastor out. So you sure don't treat their families well. Treat their families well. Treat their families well. How in the world you say you love your pastor, but you don't speak to the first lady? How you say that you love your pastor and you holding their kids to a standard that your kids don't live by? I'm not trying to be funny. You don't live by. You want them 15 and 17-year-olds to be better than you are, and you 53. Oh, don't nobody want to talk to me. Baby, I need me an organ up in here, because I'm trying to have a conversation with you. No, that you want your pastor to serve you well, but you disrespect his wife. You want your pastor to serve you well, but you pick their kids apart. And you want to know why a lot of these kids grow up and can't stand the church? Y'all mean tails. Babe, whatever key I need to be in so I can hit all of the range, Apostle, whatever it is. No, real talk. I'm saying real talk. You want to know why a lot of these kids grow up and they can't stand the church? They can't stand the church because of your mean tail. That's why they can't stand the church. They can't stand the church because you hold kids. You mad at little Sarah because she got pregnant out of wedlock, but you is 53 with 4 baby daddies and you judging 15-year-old Sarah. That is why. Literally. And so the enemy uses the meanness of the church to get the kids to hate church and God. He uses the harshness that we deal with the first family, because y'all love that first. He uses the harshness of that, because let me ask you something. What do you expect them kids to do when they know how you done talked about their mom and daddy? Who do you expect them kids to be? Right now, you ready to click and cuss somebody out if you think they was talking about you. But you expect these young kids to be able to navigate the space that they watch their mom and daddy sit up and pray for you and then watch you talk about them like a dog. So treat their families well. And I will say this, I feel this prophetically. I feel like somebody, even if you're not at that church anymore, it's a first lady you owe an apology to. You was real reckless. You didn't handle her well. So if that's you, you can go ahead and fix that with that first lady. Okay, we almost done. We got 3 more. Are you being blessed by this? Treat their families well. Create a culture of care. Create a culture of care. Oh, Jessica, I can't wait to see them notes. Create a culture of care. What do I mean, create a culture of care? Here's what I mean, create a culture of care. At our church is 2 pastors and 100 and something active partners. If you know Crystal sick and in the hospital, you go. How am I and Pastor Strick supposed to be responsible for all of the people when you knew it? You go do something about it. Create a culture of care. You ain't seen Miss Smith at church in 4 weeks? Don't come tell me. Go find out where Miss Smith is. Take Miss Smith to coffee and find out why she's not at church. Don't just tag her on the broadcast. Get involved in her life. You go. We teach you to do the word. You go lay hands on the sick. You say to pastors, listen, Pastor, Friday, I know it's your date night. Don't y'all miss y'all date night. We're going to go to sit with Sister So-and-so Nim while they're at the hospital. I love what Barbara said. We can add this to the notes, ma'am. Quit getting mad because the pastors themselves did not come. You go, somebody going through, you go see. Create a culture of care. Don't be a gossip. Create a culture of care. Don't be messy. Create a culture of care. Don't fight against leadership. Because I want to tell you that most of the people who got so much commentary about pastoring can't manage a small group for 3 months. Because, baby, people is more than a notion. That's what the old folks say. Say more than a notion. People is more than a notion. And everybody think that they could be good at being a pastor when we just talking about preaching. But, baby, let me tell you something. Managing God's people, because you can't click on them the way that you want to with people in the streets, because people in the streets, you just grab them around the throat, but you can't do that because you represent the Lord and you got to treat them well. Baby, let me tell you something. Most of the people who think that they could pastor better, you can't lead on your team. You into it with 15 people on your team. Child, bye. Stop that. All right. Let's go. Create a culture of care. Number 9, handle conflicts biblically. Now, I'm going to tell y'all what the Bible says about conflicts. The Bible says if I have a conflict with apostle, that I'm supposed to go to apostle before I go to Karen. That's what the Bible tells me. So how have you talked to 4 other people on the praise team, but you ain't talked to the lady who sing beside you that you aggravated with? How have you decided that the greeter had an issue with you and had a conversation with 13 people about how the greeter is rude and you haven't talked to her? Handle conflicts biblically. There's a biblical protocol for conflicts. I got a problem with apostle, I got to go to apostle. If apostle doesn't hear me, I go get somebody else. We go back to apostle. If that doesn't work with somebody else, we go again. And then we bring it to the church. Then we bring it to the church. Now we done talked to 13 people about a conflict, because one of the things that I don't think people feel about, that understand about this. Now, let me say this. I do think there are times that you can talk to somebody about how to handle a conflict because you want to handle it well. But I think you got to know in your heart that your intent is that you really went to Courtney to know how to handle the conflict, not because you want Courtney to know the details, not because you was trying to spill the tea. So you want to help your pastors handle conflict biblically. In church, you got to see something, say something. And this gonna sound real graphic. This will sound real graphic. I was talking to a friend, and the friend was talking about that at their church, there was a basically there was a sex ring taking place in the church. And what this means is that a group of people had got together and they were supposed to be having small groups, and they had started deciding who else they thought was fine in the church, right? And so these people had started sliding in people DMs and they were sliding into some other stuff too. Now, when it all comes out, people blame the pastor, but there were people who knew who never told the pastor. They never told the pastor. They never confronted the people. I think those people are complicit. So then the people was like, oh, the pastor isn't being a good leader. The pastor didn't know. You knew that Miss Jones and Mr. Smith was meeting up at the Hyatt every other Thursday. You knew that. Your responsibility was to go say something to them. And if they didn't deal with it, then to go say something to the leadership. All right, one more and we out of here. Somebody just say one more. Stay with honor, leave with honor. If you go be there, be with honor. And if you're going to leave with honor. Stay with honor, leave with honor. Imagine both saying that these people change your life and you would leave the church and not even say goodbye. Imagine that you love every prophetic word that come out these people's mouth that tell you that you're about to get blessed, but now you're talking about them because they told you need to quit cussing. Imagine that you want to walk in the same anointing, but you can't serve. Imagine that. So you stay with honor and you leave with honor. Now I'm just going to tell you, I got a rule. I think I'm going to post it when we get through here. I don't fool with nobody. Somebody say nobody. Where is that Oregon apostle? I don't fool with nobody who don't fool with Cynthia and Tony Brazelton, because they are the spiritual parents that changed our life. And if we your pastors, we still married because of them. And I don't fool with nobody who don't fool with Strick. I don't fool with nobody who don't fool with Chris. I don't fool with nobody who don't fool with the Marlows. And I don't fool with nobody who don't fool with Nitra. It ain't no way. People be trying to be all like deep, like, I think it's really immature that you wouldn't be friends with somebody that your friend don't like. Baby, let me tell you what I think is stupid. I think it is stupid for you to not recognize the people that God has given to change your life, and for you to be sitting up being friends with somebody who don't like them. I think you got to be some kind of foolish. I think that I think that you got to be crazy that somebody has Thank you, Dimitri. I think you got to be out your mind. I think you're not well. I'm be honest with you. I think you're not well. I think that if you have had a pastor who has changed your life, and you will sit up and kiki and ha in a space with somebody who talk about them, I don't think you will. I don't think you will. Like but I think something wrong with you. And throughout our life, this is my wrap up. We get, I'm a pastor, so we getting ready to go into my second closing. Like throughout our life, people have tried to play that game with me and Pastor Strick, and people have tried to go to him and go to me and say, and say things like, you know what, Pastor John, I just like it better when you preach. You can get out of here. You can get up out of here, because what you're not finna do is sow no discord between me and this man right here. People have tried to say to him, you know what? I just think you're a better teacher than Pastor Sean. You better get out of here. What you not going to do is that mess up in here. Well, we're not finna sow that discord, because one of the things I have learned about the enemy, and I'm going to tell y'all this is your bonus right here. The enemy is never playing for today. He's always playing the long game. I want you to hear what I'm saying. When the enemy wants me to hear something negative about Crystal, he's typically going to do it when I don't have any offense toward Crystal. So then I'm going to be like, oh no, Crystal would never do that. He wants to plant that seed in my heart. So when later on me and Crystal have a disagreement, when later on we don't see eye to eye on something, when later on she don't think I handled her right and I don't think she handled me right, then now the enemy gets to let that thing that somebody else said grow up, which is the reason that if you say something about my people, I'm going to nip that in the bud, because I understand your point that you have been sent by the devourer, and you are being used to play the long game, to separate me from the people I'm called to do life with. And I just believe that when you realize the people in your life are a gift, that you ought to elevate their treatment. All right. Well, do y'all have any questions? Because I'm about to go. Now, let me tell you what, I'm going to give y'all some instructions. Do you have a pastor? If you have a pastor, listen, this week I challenge you to do something nice for your pastor. It don't have to be big. It don't have to be extravagant. And if your pastor like Dunkin' Donuts, do not get them a Starbucks gift card, because they don't want that. They want Dunkin' Donuts. And let me say this. We don't want no more crosses, no more Bibles, and no more pictures of white Jesus. We don't. Hear what I'm saying? We don't want no more Bibles. We don't want no more crosses. And we don't want no more pictures of white Jesus. The truth of it is, we probably got more Bibles than you do. We don't want no more Bibles. Don't bring us another Bible. I thought you was a pastor. I am. That's why I got all the Bibles I need. I don't want another Bible. I don't want now another a picture of footprints. I know he carried me when I couldn't carry myself. I don't want that. I don't want now another cross. Jesus got up off the cross. Don't bring me now another cross as a gift. And I'm telling you on behalf of pastors, they don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want. Put in the comments, they don't want. Because some of y'all be trying to give super spiritual stuff to the Lord, to saints, because you think because we love Jesus. You think because we love Jesus that all we want is we don't want that mess. We don't. We got Bibles. I'm sitting in this office right now. Probably I can put my hand on 10 Bibles. I don't want no Bible. And the truth of it is, you probably would not buy the Bible I wanted if it was a Bible I wanted. All right. I hope y'all got something from this. You tell me your big takeaway and we're about to go. Listen, I'll close my iPad. I hope you got something from this. If you're committed to do something nice for your pastor this week, I want you to put it in the comment, unless you go to FOC, because I don't want to know about that. Or do something for your other pastors. Right? Right. Get a First Lady of Victoria's Secret card, and then don't call them on Friday. It's not a fourth close, Crystal. That's the wrap up of third close. Jessica said, if you don't know what your pastors might want, ask them or ask another leader. I love Erica. She said, I need to do better. Shout out to the many saints who will acknowledge they need to do better. Barbara said, create a big takeaway, create a culture of care. Don't go to church and just care about yourself. All right. Daniel said, I'm going to send my pastor some money for lunch. Some of y'all pastors go be stunned when y'all send them something. They going to be like, what in the world is happening up in here? You got to tell them, I'm not sending this because I'm getting ready to leave next month. I just wanted to be a blessing to you. All right. Thank y'all for hanging out. God bless y'all. I just want to say this one more time. It's my 30th anniversary on Tuesday. All right. I love y'all. I got to go. God bless you. Thanks for hanging out.